All right. So at least I'm not making that same mistake yet. So as you noticed in the chat section, I put down the classroom ID for the online labs. Honestly, I was fighting with the publisher and with the organization that makes those labs all last week, trying to see how we could bulk purchase access for you guys, because normally that's something that it would be in the, can you hear my, can you hear the bird?
We hear you.
And I was wondering if you could hear the bird. I have a clock that makes bird sounds.
Yeah, I kind of hear it.
Anyway, so normally that would be something that would go through like the bookstore or something, and you guys would purchase it. But I fought like tooth and nail to try and make sure that we could get, you know, that you guys would have free access to it. So we can all thank the Dean, Denise Adams, for that, and Luke Sathern for helping to push that through. I am not an administrator for the classroom for the labs. And so I wasn't too sure how to add people, because if you're the administrator, then you can add codes and students at the same time. And since I was giving you the codes, I wasn't too sure how I was going to get to add you to the classroom. So I'm thrilled to know that using this classroom ID will allow you guys access to the classroom. And you're going to see, if you haven't already logged in and looked at them, you're going to see that they're almost identical to what we're doing in our live labs, except you're using VMs. There's a couple of things that are changed. For example, we're not using CSCI74 as the domain. They're using adatum.com, and password is capital P A $, as opposed to capital P @. Other than that, it's going to be pretty much identical. I have posted the labs, and kind of opening things up as I get things done. So for this and I'm sorry, but the lecture for this chapter, it is short, which I'm sure you'll be thrilled about, but there's no pretty pictures and there's no great transitions or anything, because priorities. So with that said, I've got the essay questions posted. I've got the quiz up. I've got the lab up, and you can have access to it at any time. I don't know if there might be a difference between the directions on the lab when you're in that environment and you're pulling it up versus the document that I have posted on Canvas. So if you see something that's a little bit different, don't freak out and panic. Just go with whatever is on the online labs. And basically you'll just be, you know, doing your snips and answering the questions the same way we've been doing it throughout class. If you like this online lab environment, next semester when we're doing 75, it will be an option for you to purchase on your own, depending upon what the situation is. If we're still remoting at that point, then I will, of course, fight tooth and nail to make sure that we cover it. But if we're meeting face to face, I hope, then that will be an option for you, so that we can avoid maybe some of the problems that we've had in the past. I'll still do in-class labs, but you will have the option to purchase the online lab environment for yourself to do the labs if you choose to do that instead, because they're almost identical which is perfect because that'll make it so much easier for me to push this through curriculum committee when it comes to getting online modality. So a couple of people I haven't seen in a while yet, Monster J and Tim and B, Tim Williams and B. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing
Yeah.
all right, hanging in there. Are you guys working at all or?
My restaurant closed for now, so
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. Um, as I was telling this morning's class, there was a petition to the Senate to have everybody's financial aid either increased or adjusted to meet, your guys' needs. I don't know whether or not it's going to go through. Who knows what those idiots are going to do? But I'm fighting for you. I signed it, so I'm on the list. Also, Butte College's website is going to have a list of like resources. I don't know if any of you guys are doing okay when it comes to food and that kind of stuff. Let me know if there's anything that I can do to help you out. I will try and find the resources to, for you to access. Okay. So how many of you guys have already logged into the online labs?
The MOAC, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I have.
What do you think?
Let me see. Okay, it shows all of our labs in vertical order. So all we have to do is just press the take lab tab to start doing it, right?
Yeah, and I believe there's also a student guide there that gives you instructions as well.
Student guide. Okay, on the side, I see access codes, history, statistics, support, and FAQs.
Okay, well, if there isn't a guide, I will post one. But this should be relatively self-explanatory. So has anybody tried one of the labs to check it out? What do you think?
Yeah, I loaded it up. I'm logged into one of them, and it looks just like how we had our setup.
Yeah. Which is yay. So it shouldn't be that difficult at all. And this way we don't have to worry about what kind of resources you have on your home computer or any of that. And it looks like, I haven't actually had a chance to play in there yet, but it looks like you can save your lab for later. What's so funny, Corey?
Nothing. I just got a good message from somebody. Sorry, I'm getting distracted.
So it looks like you can save your lab for later. I'm not too sure how that works, but that ought to be interesting.
Hey, do we start off from lab 1 all the way down to lab 13, right?
No, what chapter are we on?
Six.
On 6.
We're on chapter 6. We've already done labs 1 through 5, right?
Okay.
Mhm.
And if you haven't done one of the labs before and you need to submit it, you can do that.
Sure.
So if somebody didn't do chapter 5 lab, they can do it now and submit it. And that'll be fine.
Good.
My main objective is to try and get all of this posted, as much of this posted as possible, so that if you are so inclined and need a diversion from games or family, that you can pretend that you're working and do stuff. And get stuff done. Okay, so and I did press the record button, right? Yes, I did. Good. Tim, you didn't remind me.
For me?
Tim, I thought you were going to remind me to press the record button.
Oh man, look what happened.
Yeah, but that's okay. I did. Okay, so let's, okay, that's not going to work. Share. The screen. Share. Okay. I'm gonna move chat down there. Oh, good. Now I can see everyone. Wonderful. Okay, so as you can see, here's the classroom code. Here's the link to your access. Here is the student guide that I was talking about, Tim. The self-service student guide.
Oh yeah, it's on my.
And let's see. Let's start our fun lecture, because I know how much you guys love my lectures. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about IPAM, which is a good tool for managing your IP addressing. We'll talk about how to configure it and how we can manage it using group policy, setting up your server discovery, creating and managing IP blocks and ranges, and migrating your existing workloads to IPAM, because of course you're going to already have your networks and subnets all set up, you know, before you install IPAM. So you want to make sure that you can migrate it okay. And what kind of scenarios that you would use it for. System Center Virtual Machine Manager, which allows you to integrate your virtual machines and your real machines when it comes to your IP address space. So IPAM is not a new network function. Planning, managing, tracking, and auditing IP addresses has been a thorn in all of the network administrators' sides for a really long time. Back in the old days, we would have a spreadsheet with our IP addresses and we would manually assign them, which was really a pain. And even when we were using DHCP, we would need to make sure that we were keeping on track of things, because of course we're going to have servers and printers and devices that need static addresses. So previously, the only method of managing your IP addressing scheme was through, before Server 2012 was using DHCP and DNS management consoles, and third-party databases and applications, or spreadsheets, or even, you know, sometimes Post-its with, you know, IP addresses and network node information marked out. So IPAM came out in Server 2012, and it was in Server 2012 R2 as well. And in Windows Server 2016, it has been cleaned up enough that it's a functional tool. As I'm sure you guys are aware, when the first year that a tool comes out, you know, whether it's this or direct access or one of those things, the first year that it comes out in the server environment, it's usually half-baked and not together. And IPAM seems to be working quite well now. That said, there are still tools from SolarWinds and other third parties that can do this as well. So when we are installing and configuring IPAM, some of the things that we need to make sure that we understand is some of the terminology and functional limitations. So we've got an IP address block, and the IP address blocks are the highest level conceptual entities in an IP address space. We have the IP address range, which would be like your subnets, right? They're the next hierarchical level of IP address spaces beneath the block. And IP addresses, of course, which are the individual addresses that are contained in that range. So, so here we have a picture of the hierarchy. Sorry, it's not a better picture. As I said, I've got my priorities. But as we can see, we have our block of addresses up here. And then we have our range of addresses. So we have our different subnets, and then we have the IP addresses that are inside of each of those ranges. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Am I going too fast or too slow?
No, you sound good.
No, it's doing a lot better than it did in Cisco.
Oh, interesting.
There's been no issues at all so far.
So far. Okay, and it's a really short lecture, so hopefully there won't be. So this kind of shows how all of the components fit inside of the hierarchical model. And why isn't, okay. So installing IPAM. So the planning stage is fairly simple. But the servers, the services, and the administrators all have to be configured carefully to ensure that the feature actually works properly. So we're going to have a client and a IPAM server and an IPAM client. And here's your basic instructions on how to do this. You're gonna, go into Server Manager, add roles and features, etc., and just install the role and whatever features. And once you've installed it, you need to think about provisioning it, and you can do it either manually or through group policy. You can use automatic group policy-based provisioning and manual provisioning. The default is group policy-based, and once you select that and it's provisioned, the only method for reversing that is to uninstall IPAM and reinstall it. So if you select group policy, that's what you're stuck with. Just something to think about, because if you want to change your mind, you're going to have to uninstall IPAM and then reinstall it again. But that's the default. If you're using PowerShell, here is your wonderful little PowerShell command to do that. And then once you've entered that, you'll be prompted to confirm that you want to perform that action. Once it runs, you're just going to type yes and enter, and through the magic of PowerShell, it will work. So provisioning. So this is, pretty straightforward. One of the things I want you to think about, though, is right here on step 8, where it has on the configure database page, the Windows internal database is already selected by default. So with Server 2016 during the provisioning space, you can use either the Windows internal database, or you can select Microsoft SQL Server. So you can use a dedicated SQL Server if you have one up and running. By using an external database, if you're using SQL Server, you'll also have additional scalability, disaster recovery, and reporting. So that might be one of the reasons why you would want to use that. During provisioning, the Windows internal database is automatically selected by default, and the database is stored in the Windows System 32 IPAM database folder. And then, of course, on the summary page, once you've done all that, you're just going to complete it, and then you can go into Active Directory users and computers, expand your domain, and expand the users container. And inside the user container, you've got a new user called IPAM UG, which is the IPAM user group. And on the member of tab, you want to add yourself, and you want to put enterprise admins, event log readers, and that will allow you to have access and manage it. Once you've done that, close your Active Directory, reboot your DC1. Once you've rebooted DC1, make sure that you reconnect all of your other machines, because don't forget, when you've got things connected to your domain controller and your domain controller goes down, you're going to have to reconnect those other devices that are lost without their domain controller. So server discovery it allows you to play with your domains and define the domains in the forest that contain the servers that you're going to be managing. So once you've installed and provisioned the IPAM server, the next 2 steps are to configure your server discovery and then start server discovery, which is really not rocket science. This is pretty cool and pretty easy. Once IPAM discovery is complete, then you can select which servers, roles, and services are going to be managed, and then launch your various data collection tasks. So it's going to do an inventory of your network. And here is the task and the default frequency of how frequent. Oh, here, my internet connection is unstable again. So we've got our task name, a description of it, and the default frequency. So how frequently it's going to collect that information and check it. So every 30 minutes, it's going to collect DNS zone status from your DNS servers. Every day, it's going to check IP address expirations and any log notifications. So it's really nice that it's going to check your address utilization from DHCP, so you can see how many leases are out there and how frequently they turn over, which is kind of important. So when you configure server discovery, you're going to go in Server Manager. You're going to go to the IPAM overview page, configure server discovery, and add your domain, and just select OK and start the discovery. It's going to take a while for it to discover all of the devices and what's going on. Oh, my phone is ringing. I'm hoping that that doesn't cut us off. If it does, I'll reconnect. Server discovery. So you can add servers to manage and verify your IPAM access. Refresh your service.
Hey, she's back. We
Was
lost you for a minute.
Okay, I was just saying my phone was ringing.
Oh,
And I was saying,
yeah,
well,
yes.
if you lose me, that's why. Sorry, I can't turn off my phone. You know, I can't turn that part of it off. So that's sort of a pain. It's nice to see that I don't have to reconnect everything, right? We don't all get kicked out. So that's nice. Anyway, so once you've done your server discovery, it's going to look around and see all the things that are set up. And once you've installed and configured it, the administrator is going to need to monitor the utilization of IP addresses within whatever scope is in your control. So you can delegate scopes to different people. IPAM has a lot of monitoring tools available to make this way easier, preventing ranges from running out of available addresses, right? Or blocks running out of ranges. So it's really nice that we can automate that task because it just makes our life so much easier. So creating an IP address block, you're just going to go to IPAM, select IP address blocks, and add the IP address block. I mean, this is so simple. Oh, for you, Monster J.
Oh, shit. Go again. Why isn't this a Facebook meme?
Subnetting in Cisco is a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, because it's subnetting. So you're going to have to create an IP address subnet. So this is another reason why you need to know how to subnet, is so that your ranges are actual subnets and that you're not selecting ranges that are not legitimate. Because you certainly don't want to put a network address in there or a broadcast address, right? We're dealing with IPv4 here. So you're going to want to put in a valid subnet range. And in order to know what a valid subnet range is, you need to know subnetting. Okay, you can create an IP address range group, add the range. There are additional custom configuration options that you can make. We can allow the IPAM administrator to associate the IP address range with a number of different criteria. For example, your Active Directory site, country, region, type of network, and so on. It's also possible to select user entered values. So you would just click add and then select whatever chosen options you want to add. Enter the required user data and then click OK. Creating these attributes kind of assists you in tracking and monitoring your IP address range utilization. And then when you're done, just click OK to finish the creation of the IP address range. So as I said, you're already going to have a network that has, IP addresses and DHCP and DNS out there. So most IP address space management is currently carried out by spreadsheets and third-party applications and printed material, and having IPAM, that feature configured and provisioned, and discovery of the IPAM, as an administrator, you can migrate all of the address space into the IPAM database. And we can do that just by using a CSV file. You want to make sure that you can import the IP address block, the ranges, the addresses, and we can import and update the ranges. So you're just going to go into IPAM, select IP address blocks, and then select whatever task you're going to do, whether it's importing blocks, subnets, ranges, or addresses. And then you're going to navigate to wherever your CSV file is, open it, and import it. So we can create logical groups of IP address ranges so you can visualize the address space. After you've configured IPAM to collect all that necessary information, you can look at utilization trends to show you how many IP addresses are being used. For example, you can select IP address blocks or IP address inventory or an IP address range, and then you can look at the configuration details or utilization trend. So you can see how things are being managed. Which is very nice to have that option. It's nice to have a dashboard that gives you all of the things. So when would you use IPAM with System Center Virtual Machine Manager? So once you've integrated IPAM and Virtual Machine Manager by associating the logical addresses with the virtual networks. So we've got a lot of cloud resources, right? And we have physical topologies, and we've got the virtual topologies, and we've got VLANs up in the cloud for our virtual machines, right? And we want to make sure that we can access all of these things as flawlessly as possible. And if we are doing, we're just trying to make sure that we're managing all of our addressing and everything. So you can use System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and you can use that with Microsoft Hyper-V or ESXi for VMware. And you can use the IPAM server to monitor the usage of your VM networks that have been configured or any changes that have been made in Virtual Machine Manager. You're going to still have to configure your virtual machine networks with Virtual Machine Manager. So this isn't going to take the place of your Hyper-V manager, your Virtual Machine Manager. This is just going to aid you in managing your virtual cloud-based stuff with your local resources. So to add it in Virtual Machine Manager, you're going to open up the Fabric workspace. And anytime we're talking about our cloud resources and our cloud networking resources, we're dealing with a Fabric. expand networking, open up your network service, and then you can add the resources. So for example, there's a lot of, or there are some, companies that are going to Azure Active Directory, for the management of their domain. And this would allow you to manage all those things as though they were all local. So open up Microsoft's server IP address management, set up your credentials and then make sure that you're running it as administrator. And then you're going to need to put information in the connection string page. And that's going to be the fully qualified domain name of your IPAM server. And then select next. For those of you, how many of you guys took SQL Server already? Right, so remember when we were dealing with Azure and we had to deal with the fully qualified domain name that they gave us in Azure, right? So those are some of the things that we'd have to think about and take note of. So on the provider, you're gonna put Microsoft IPAM provider, and then test it to run your validation tests. Please, always, anytime there's an opportunity to run a validation test, hit that button and run the validation test, because that's just going to save you so much work. On host, that's kind of like if you don't have a connection, typing ping first or first checking your VLAN ID. I mean, all of those validation tests are there to make sure that you're not going to have any problems, or to alert you of any problems that you might have not, thought about. So on the host group, you're going to select one or more host groups that you want to integrate between the IPAM server and virtual machine manager. And then you're going to confirm that you've got the right settings and finish it. And then you can right click it and refresh it to bring up the latest listings. And as you can see, there wasn't a whole lot going on for this chapter. And this is just a really nice management tool for your IP addressing and so your DHCP and your DNS. And as long as you follow all of the proper steps, and it shouldn't have many problems at all. There are some post-installation tasks, of course, that you want to make sure that you take care of. And you can delegate administration, so you don't have to manage all the things. You could have, different administrators, managing different subnets. And so you're going to have an IPAM client console, and that's where you're going to have it's going to show all the things. So it gives you a step above our DHCP console, right? Where our console manager, our DHCP console, allows us to see our addresses, our scopes, etc. This is going to give us a step up from that, because we're also going to be able to manage our cloud resources from there. And it allows you, of course, to track your ranges and all those fun things. And don't forget that you can import your IP data using CSV files. And that way you can bring the things that are already out there and addressed into your environment and have it current and real time. And that's all that is. Any questions? I really do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to log in to the MOAC labs.
I'm on there right now.
Wonderful, good. And did you add this class ID to your account?
Yeah, I did that before I logged in.
Good, wonderful, that's great. So I think the way we're going to do this is perhaps on Tuesdays we'll have lecture on a meeting, and then on Thursdays I'll just be available if you guys have problems or anything. How does that sound?
right?
Sounds good.
That way I'm kind of conserving my bandwidth and so I can keep uploading things.
Are you capped at all?
I am capped. Yeah, Sprint is one that has not dropped their cap or has not raised their cap or lifted their cap yet, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm at 120 gigs a month for that, which isn't much when it comes to uploading videos to YouTube. So now that I said that, I should stop recording.